Welcome back to the Command Stack. Today we're going to be talking about the recent Adepticon tournament for Star Wars Armada. Let's do a quick introduction though of the Command staff. I am John, and we have with us who else today?
Gary.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, man.
Same time, one at a time.
Try it again, guys. Try it again. I'm Ryan.
And we have Ken, and we have Gary.
And I'm Kent. Yeah.
Oh, man.
We're all professionals, everybody.
Yeah.
We're all
Second
pros.
episode, working out the kinks. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm going to kick it over to Ryan, and Ryan's going to talk about where you can find our podcast. If you're listening to it, you clearly know already one of the places, but there are also others.
Yeah, if you're listening to it and you know someone who likes Armada or just likes gaming, tell people to come and subscribe to Command Stack. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts. We're also on Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter too. We'd like to try to have some Twitter engagement. It's just Command Stack at. And then if you want to email us, you can reach us at command.stack.podcast@gmail.com. You know, if you want to, that's a good place to send us lists that, you know, for a tournament. If you want us to talk about your tournament, we'd be happy to do that. So, you know, command.stack.podcast@gmail.com is one of the places where you can reach us. And then, as always, we're on the Ion Radio Discord. We have a little channel there that you can reach out to us as well.
Also, you can find us on the Ion Radio Discord. There's also links that you can find on all of our stuff, and there's a Command Stack, and you can talk to all four of us directly right there as well. I'm going to kick it now over to Garrett, who's going to talk about the news.
Okay, so there's a couple things that have happened. Obviously, Adepticon was our first official Grand Championship of the year. Going forward, we don't have the next date for the next official tournament, but we do have a store organized play kit coming out sometime this summer. The dates to be determined, but we do know it's going to be a little scenario-based kit revolving around the Maelstrom and the Ma from the Solo movie. And so I think estimates for like an hour and a half of playtime. So it'll be good for a multiple run event at your store. So that'll be nice to get some people in. It'll come with some cardboard tokens and such to make playing the scenario possible, like a new obstacle, basically, similar to like the Gravity Rift we got. And then with other news, we got an officially updated rules of reference guide with some erratas, just explaining some of the former rules. If you want to check that out, I recommend that. And then we probably won't go over each one of those here today. But that is the biggest news I have. Does anybody else have anything else?
Yeah, I believe Ken's going to talk about what we're planning on doing for our next episode.
Yeah, so kind of some interesting quick updates for future news that we're going to see. The guys over at Fly Casual were kind enough to send us all of the lists for the Australian Grand Championships. So that is something that we wanted to talk about today, but with all the information we've got with Adepticon, we're going to push this off to a whole separate episode. So special thanks goes out to Fly Casual. We're looking forward to talking about all those lists.
Okay, so now let's get to the meat of it. Let's talk about Adepticon. Okay, so let's talk about the Adepticon tournament. It was a 2-day event. It had a total of 52 players in it. The first day was 4 rounds of Swiss, and from that they did a top 8 cut. Then those top 8 played 3 more rounds on day 2 to determine who the actual placement of those top 8 individuals. So we actually had one of our members here, Ryan. He actually went to Adepticon and played, and he actually placed. So I'm going to kick it over to him, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience, and then talk about the 4th place fleet that was run by Justin.
Yeah, well, I made the trip up to Chicago from Louisville, and my wife was lucky enough or great enough to let me go. I got to meet Ken in person for the first time.
So you were lucky enough.
I was lucky enough, yes. Yes, you're right. I got to meet Ken in person. That was great. And then I played the first day. I won 3-1. Got a couple of big wins, which I kind of needed to do because I did lose 4-7. And then the next, so I was just thrilled I made the top 8. I didn't really expect to make the top 8. That was kind of the best I've ever done in a tournament. And then at the top 8, I went 1-2, and was a little disappointed, but was in it to the end, into the last game, and so I had a good time. And I flew Radis, which I thought was kind of a good counter to a lot of things that's out there right now. I was the only person to fly Radis, so I will keep banging the drum. He's if you're frustrated with the meta, Radis counters a lot. So I just want to put that out there. But so I'm here to talk about the 4th place list, which was Justin, who, if you remember from last episode, is the same Justin Rebel from LVO, who flew a Leia list. This time he's flying Kraken with CR90A Janus Light with Hondo on it and TRC. He's flying another CR90 with TRCs, another TRC 90. So 3 total. And then he's flying the CR90B with Ezra and heavy ion emplacements. And then GR75 with Torn Far, Slicer Tools, and Bright Hope. So he's got a total of 5 activations there. He has for a hefty squad ball of Shara Tycho, Lando, Ketsu, 2 A-Wings, and 2 YT-2400s. And then his objectives are for red, Ion Storm, capture the VIP for his yellow objective, and blue for infested fields. So that's his list. He ended up finishing 4th. I played him on stream on the first day, or on the second day for the first game. It was a good game. Could have gone either way, but he flew it really well. I'll just say he knows how to fly CR90s really well. He was able to stay within millimeters outside of black range of my MC30. I should say just a little bit about my list. I flew MC30, kitted out, and I dropped a Star Cruiser, and then I had a bunch of rogues. So in our game, I took capture the VIP because Ion Storm is a trap. With the TRCs, he's going to score a ton of points. And then with Infested Fields, I had a bunch of rogues, and Infested Fields are really bad for rogues. So I took capture the VIP, and he won the objective. He flipped it on me, won 7-4. But it was a great game, really well played and really well flown by him.
Okay, so I know one of the things that people did ask us about our last podcast is if we went into a little bit more detail into certain cards and how they interact. So the thing that stood out for me the most about this list to talk about, let's talk a little bit about Ezra and then heavy ion emplacements. Everything else on the list is pretty standard. I feel like specifically the CR90B is something that you don't generally see. And should be talked about a little bit more, if you don't mind going over that, Ryan, or I can either.
Yeah, so I'll talk about it like in the context of our game. So we had captured the VIP. What he did was he put the objective token on an obstacle, and then when you reveal a dial on the CR90B, that's when Ezra activates, and then Ezra lets you move an obstacle. I think it's 1 to 2, and so he's capturing basically. Moving that obstacle towards him, and then the timing is the same so that you can grab that obstacle. So he's turn 1, scored 50 points basically right off the bat. And then with the CR90B with heavy ion placements, that if you're rolling a blue crit and the blue crit stays, you're dealing 3 shield damage, 1 to the side to each adjacent hull, and then 1 to the hull you're targeting. And it's a really nasty way to up the firepower of a CR90B. It's really kind of an unexpected blast. And I think I was talking to him, and I don't think he got it off too much during the tournament, but it's still, with Torn Far for a reroll, lets you reroll, 2 blue attacks. You're just fishing for crits, and it's a lot of damage on a 39-point ship.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So did he then take the token on the CR90B itself?
He did. He did.
And then he just ran off with it because it doesn't matter because it's a blue range dice ship anyway.
Well, he actually flew against me, so he flew right at me, but leveraged it and flew it in such a way that I dropped my Radis turn 2 and double arced his Corvette, and so I was ready to blow it up top of the turn, but he activated that, forced him to activate it. And he was able to fly it in such a way that it avoided. I was trying to bring him into the MC-30, but he avoided it with some skillful flying, and eventually flew past me. And like you said, John, flew away. He got there, just took him a little bit longer.
Yeah. So I have to hand it to him. Using Ezra basically as your strategic squadron, and then not having to take VCX is pretty brilliant because it allows you then to take things like VIP, which sometimes is a risk, but just being able to drop it on an obstacle and pull it into you is a very smart way how to use it. So I give them definite props for that. I had not ever thought about that before.
It was a great move. I mean, it helps some. There's a lot of good obstacle play. Ezra's great. If you have the points, I would definitely try to find, and you have an officer slot, that might be even more important. Try and find his place. He's fun too. Like, he's one of the more fun cards in the game.
Yeah. I think I've thought a lot about using him in the past, but I don't know if I've ever actually used him. I know Ken has used it on Ion Radio in the past. I don't know if I've ever done it though. I have him in lists that are coming up that haven't been aired yet, but I really like that idea of dropping it and pulling the obstacle toward yourself. So just continuing on from the last one, we already know you're going to choose capture the VIP if you had to face this list. That makes it easy. So we're going to skip over you. We'll go to Garrett. What of the 3 obstacles would you choose if you were facing this list?
Well, again, it depends on the fleet you're bringing, but I'd probably take infested fields and try and play those Exogoras in a way that neutralizes his squadrons as much as mine if I'm bringing squadrons, but I'm not taking Ion Storm, and the capture the VIP is built for him, so I'm not going to do that.
How about yourself, Ken?
Probably also take infested fields. The current list that I'm flying in tournaments is an Ozzel MSU list. Got a couple fighters in there, and yeah, I'd probably kind of do the exact same thing Garrett's doing. Look to either stay away from wherever the Exogorts are or leverage it to my advantage to kind of lock down his.
Okay. I would agree with you guys. It depends on my fighter makeup. As Ryan said earlier, he had rogues which don't want to play infested because the Exogoths are going to lock them down before they have a chance to activate. So if I was running a non-rogue squadron list, I'd probably pick infested fields 25% of the time. But most of the time, I think I'll just choose capture the VIP. Because most people just play their capture the VIP and just sail it off into space to avoid a combat. So then in my head, that's one less ship that I have to fight. And 50 points on the grand scheme of things, when you look at how most objectives score, is nothing. So losing that many points for me doesn't really matter. Like, technically infested fields would only be 15, but then I have all the Exogoths and obstacles being moved right in front of me. So it's like, so 75% of the time I would choose capture the VIP, then the other I would choose infested fields.
And maybe John or somebody, why is Ion Storm why is this list built to exploit Ion Storm?
So if I'll just read through the card real fast, and then you should see it. So at setup, the second player gets to place all obstacles, excluding the station, beyond distance 5 of both players' edges. When a ship that does not have an objective token ends its movement beyond distance 2 of any obstacle, or beyond distance 1 if you're player 1. So if you're choosing it, you should start looking at distance 1. If that ship belongs to the first player, assign 1 objective token to it, and the only way how to get rid of the objective token is if you resolve the engineering command. So that's how you get tokens onto your ships. Then if you have a token on your ship, It is a critical effect. If the defender has an objective token, the attacking ship's owner gains 1 victory token, which is worth 15 points. And then they can choose and discard 1 command token from the defender. If the defender does not have any command tokens, the defender in hull zone loses a shield instead. So if your ship is unfortunate enough to get it, and you run into the CR90 swarm, they will have every single attack guaranteed pretty much to be a crit in there, and then trigger it. And so you will have no tokens pretty much for the entire game to do things with. And if you do, then after they get rid of all your tokens, they're going to start removing your shields. And they don't really need to kill you because every shot was worth 15 points. And with having, what is that, 3 CR90s that can do it pretty much every turn, if your ship just sits there and gets hit by that, that's 45 points per turn minimum. And that's not even considering the fact that the CR90B can come in and play the same game. So he could generate tons and tons of tokens per turn on you just for sitting there. And it's like, oh, I just get a crit. Okay, I'll take a token. It will rapidly score points for him. It puts you at a very big disadvantage. Out of all the cards, that's clearly the one that he's decked to build and to score as many points as possible.
It's crazy when you think that for every turn, he's going to gain probably 45 and potentially 60 points off your 1 ship. You take out one of the CR90s, you get back 51. And it's a wash. You're destroying a ship. He's just shooting at you. And that's an evil combination.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Yeah, it just feels just way less risky. But it just has risk management. And then between Capture VIP and Ion Storm and Infested, right, you're less likely to take tons and tons of point damage from Infested.
Yeah. When I looked at this, that's one of those when you get handed the cards and you just nope that card right out away, hand it right back to the person. Now you're just looking at 2 cards. Like you don't even consider it.
Yeah. If you can, I don't know if it's on stream or not, but when he showed me his objectives, it literally took me 5 seconds to pick which one, because I was like, Ion Storm, nope, I know what that does. Infested fields, I got rogues, nope. Capture VIP, it is. So
yeah. Sometimes the decision's made for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, any other comments on that fleet?
No, I think I'm good.
The last thing I would like to throw in there is Justin is an expert at flying small rebel ships. That's historically, I think, pretty much the only thing I've ever seen him fly. So when you said he's very skilled with flying CR90s, it's because he's been practicing it for years and is extremely good at it.
Yeah, he was using tools and marking stars on the map, mentally, just mentally, and it was knowing, exactly where he was going to go. And I think in his mind, he had the outline of exactly where his ships were going to go. And it was, he was, I'll say this, people talk in Armada about being able to fly or think 2-3 turns ahead. And I've never been that way. I have never had that ability, but I think he does. Like, I think he knows where his fleet's going to be, 2 turns from now. And that's a real great skill.
Yeah. A little trick that someone once showed me with CR90s. If you take a movement tool and you basically put it right next to it and you turn it double click, that's your firing arc. So just food for thought. If you know that you're going to land here, you can double click it over and you could theoretically see where your firing arc is to line it up. Play with that at home on your table.
Yep.
Moving from that, let's jump over to the 3rd place fleet brought to us by Henry. It is an Agate Fleet.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about this one. This is Henry's. It's a pretty good rebel fleet. Let's talk about he's got Krista Agate, like you said. He's got a assault frigate Mark II-A, and then he's got Krista with Whale Explosives, which is a must bring to replace that defense token she discards. He takes Ruthless Strategist on it, which is important with what the squadron she pairs with. I'll get to those. He's got Reinforced Blast Doors, which isn't my favorite defensive retrofit, but it can come in clutch. Of course, he's got LTTs, Linked Turbo Laser Towers, and then Paragon, which I think is the title, allows you to add a black die if you're shooting a ship you've already shot at. And then he's got an MC-30 torpedo frigate. It's got a skilled first officer, an ordnance expert, 3 loads of black dice, external racks, H9 turbo lasers, which I think is the one that allows you to add an accuracy. Is that correct?
Yes, it allows you to change a dice with a hit or a crit to an accuracy. So
yes,
a blue dice.
And then of course he's got the foresight title, and then he's got 2 GR75s, one with Torn Far, which is a must bring with Rebel squadrons and ship. I mean, because you can re-roll a blue die for ships or squadrons. Comsnet, and then Hondo Inaka on the other GR75 with Comsnet again. No Bright Hope title. And then for squadrons, he's got Lando, which is an incredible Rebel rogue squadron. Ketsu Anyo, and then Corn Horn for his snipe. Shara Bay, because she has the worst counter in the game. And then Shara Bay, and then 3 YT-2400s, which is where that ruthless strategist comes in, because you can throw out those dies, flak, and then eat away at your 6-hull YT-2400s and increase the damage when you're flacking from that assault frigate. So for objectives, he's got most wanted, fighter ambush, and superior positions. Ryan, you flew against his fleet day 2, right?
I did. He was my last game, and it was kind of we were both in the hunt to get top 4, because if you got top 4 at Adepticon, you got Worlds tickets.
Yeah.
And so he won. He got a 7-4 on me. He took first against my Radis list, which is probably a good call. Yeah, he flew it extremely well. He's I just want to point out too, the assault frigate's got the double. It's the Mark IIA.
Yeah.
See too much of. It's got the double blue
die. Yeah. So you were first player. He was first player. You were second player. Man, if I flew against the fleet and I had to pick one of his objectives, I probably would have gone for. If I have a competent fighter wing, I might have went for fighter ambush, and maybe try to take advantage where Torn Far got in range to increase that reroll for blue dies. And then superior positions is going to be really rough if he gets on the rear of your ships. I don't know. It's almost like a risk of the most wanted. All these are good for him though. All of them make you think hard. Probably fighter ambush is what I would take though, if I was playing first player against him. Any other details about the list? Skill first officer, I guess, did he use that in your match? Did he like discard a dial with it, or? It
was actually critical, and he might have won the game, honestly, because I dropped my Star Cruiser right in front of Foresight. And so he didn't have much of a shot. I took I think he flacked or something. I can't remember, but he moved in. I took my shot with the Star Cruiser, and came, I think, within 1 hull, and I had to ram him. And so he was on. Okay, I'm telling the story wrong. So what happened? I apologize, Henry. Henry's got a YouTube channel too, Shy Valerie. He does good work. He broke down our game much better detail than I am. But I dropped, and I also had my MC-30 in there. But my MC-30 had Radis on it, and so it was more expensive. And he did a really good move where he said, all right, my MC-30 is in front of the Star Cruiser. It's not getting around it, because his MC-30 was at speed 1. And he's like, I can't jump. I'm just going to double arc your MC-30. And he's first player. So the next round, he was first player. He discarded skilled first officer, made it a con fire die, because he knew, I'm going to die. Let's just try to take out this MC-30. And he got, I think, one damage. I think he got exactly 1 or 2 damage. He threw like 3 double black dice. And with being small ship, I couldn't, discard or ask him to reroll more than 1. And so he got exactly what he needed. So I think that skilled first officer surprisingly played a really critical role in taking down the MC-30. My Star Cruiser then activated, and I killed his MC-30, but it was too late at that point. He had the more expensive MC-30.
Yeah, 1 point well spent. Yeah, usually you only ever see it in Imperial fleets just getting yeeted off by Vader. But yeah, no, I mean his fleet's good. It's when you first like look, when I first sit down and look over the table at a fleet like this, it doesn't look super intimidating because he doesn't have the 17 CR90s ready to just fly around me. But you know, with that Agate assault frigate, it's gonna be hard to destroy, especially with ballistics, and that MC-30 is just gonna hit like a truck when it comes in. And the squadrons are just it's an annoying squad ball. It's, you know, Lando's ability to go in there and auto just fire and die at you. It's just good. And the Corrin's just going to snipe away your squadrons if he can manage to like keep it unengaged. Yeah, I mean that's why he's in the top 4. So, yeah. What are y'all's thoughts on his objectives? What would you take,
Ryan? Which if you were given first player, what would you have chosen?
I'd take a hard look at Most Wanted, because there's not a lot of firepower in his list outside of his squads. Like his assault frigate, you know, I know it has Paragon, but like it's still, you know, it's a couple of red dice. And then the MC-30 is going to get one shot at you and then probably run away. So like, I don't think from a firepower standpoint, I don't think Most Wanted is that daunting. It's the point factor. So if he throws, you know, everything into your large ship or whatever, you know, he's your Most Wanted is, there's a real risk of losing a lot of points there. So it's a hard call. If you can mitigate that, I think Most Wanted is the call here.
Yeah, especially for you because your Radish ship is off the board.
Yeah.
So he basically has to choose your MC-30, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yep, I'll run away.
Exactly. For me, it would be a hard choice between Most Wanted and Fighter Ambush. So it really honestly just depends on what type of fleet I'm running. If I'm running with a bunch of smaller type ships, Most Wanted 100%, because he doesn't have the firepower. Like his firepower is in his fighters. That's where he's going to kill you. So if you're a fighter heavy, I don't really care. His one ship is only blue black, and the assault frigate, it's just an assault frigate. While it has a lot of defense tokens and things like that, if you're able to focus in on it, it's going to just die, and then you have to hunt down an MC-30, and then it's tabled. So depending on how he flies, it could just get stuck. That's probably why the skilled first officer's there. But if I was going to play conservatively, I would probably choose Fighter Ambush. How about yourself, Ken?
I jump in with Most Wanted. Again, same thing. I'm going to have an MSU fleet, likely, with the small fighter squadron complement. Likely, even if it picks up like demo, okay, great. But, you know, I still have Architon's power and, you know, other raiders that can come in and do some serious damage. So, I mean, for me, Most Wanted's the way to go.
Fair enough.
And I will say, Ken, I think that's the kind of fleet that you need to take this down, because the assault frigate's a tank, but it'll still, if you could do that magic 3 damage, you know, an attack, it's going to go down. It will, you're going to lose something going in, but it will go down if you can just chip away at it.
No, I completely agree. An assault frigate, you know, is not it's a decent ship, and it's definitely got some, you need to hit it hard to take it down. But it reminds me of like the MC-30s. As soon as you get through those shields, those things fall real fast. But, you know, assault frigate, just a little bit harder to take it down right up front. And that's mostly that brace token.
Yeah, 6 hull. I think one biggest thing about all these top 4 fleets you're talking about is the skill ceiling on these fleets is enormous. You could hand these fleets to somebody who's playing the game for a year, and it's going to take them months of playing to get that measurement of where you're placing these glass cannons on this board. I mean, I'm not good enough at Armada to fly these fleets in a competent way. But when they're done well, they're incredibly hairy to fly against. Because it's not your typical GAR or the CIS now, or an Imperial, which is all very. I mean, you can kind of fumble your way through almost a fleet if you have the right card set up. But these are all skill based. Every move matters from deployment.
I want to jump in. I want to jump in there. I agree with you for all of my opponents and for the other 7 players that were there in the top 8. I don't think my fleet in the top 8 was very high skill based. I think Radis is easy. I think it's easy mode. I think it's cheat mode. I think if you're not good at Armada, consider flying Radis because it's super fun. It's super forgiving. You can lose deployment. You can lose the activation.
I would give yourself a little more credit than that, but
I think I read the meta well, but I think I just want to say fly my fleet if you're or Radis just in general if you're struggling out there.
Yeah. For me personally, I don't have enough time to dedicate to one list. But if there was a tournament that you walk into the door and get handed a random list, I would be all over that. That's my specialty. I don't have enough time to dedicate, but if you give me any list, I can fly it by the end of 7 rounds. If I made it into the finals, yeah, I would be proficient.
Yeah, that's an important skill. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, it's completely useless, but if there was a tournament of here's your random list, I'd be good at that. I don't know if I've ever. I don't think I've run a single list more than 4 times in the last maybe 3 to 4 years. I think
it's a good way to fly. It's fun.
Yeah, the last time I played a list more than 4 times was my LVO list at the last actual LVO, so 2019.
Yeah, I keep trying to justify all these ships and things I have. Got to mix them around.
Right.
I had about 8 practice games in with my list, and that's kind of extreme for me. I usually don't practice that much. I like to skip around as well, but just goes to show you it's an easy list to fly. But overall, but Henry's a great opponent. He's got a Worlds ticket. Way to go, Henry.
I think John should fly in one of the Who's the Boss tournaments, and then get that perfect Radis drop with like an Imperial fleet or a heavy duty Republic spat fleet or something.
Yeah, that would be fun. Or just drop the Providence. Do you know how fun a Providence would be if you could just drop it in the opponent's face? Because the Providence is just like an upticked MC75, and they're one of my favorite things to drop on people. Like, just drop a Providence, just boom, right in the middle of the play table would be amazing. That would be a lot of fun.
Drop an SSD. There you go.
Yeah.
You can't drop it.
That's true. Command 4. Yeah. Those pesky 1.5 rule changes.
I know, right? It already reaches across the table. Like, you basically drop it and it's in their deployment zone flying towards you. Okay, so let's move on to the next fleet then. Finishing in 2nd place, we have Lucas W., who also has a Krista Agate Fleet. So let's take a look at it. So this Agate Fleet is a Starhawk battleship Mark I. It has Krista Agate on it. Walix Bliss, and he's to get tokens back. You have expert shield techs, local fire control, proximity mines, point defense ion cannons, and linked turbo laser towers, along with the Unity title. So let me quickly go over what some of these cards do. So local fire control says that you must replace one of your defense tokens with a salvo. So goodbye contain, hello salvo. The proximity mines allows you to deploy proximity mines. You get 1 proximity mine for every 2 engineering points that you have, so you'll get 2 proximity mines. The point defense ion cannons allows you to reroll a dice that is against you at close range, which is good to survive fighter attacks. Link turbo laser towers, we talk about it all the time. I don't need to go over that. Unity title, because this is the first Starhawk that we've talked about, let's go over that. This title, after you deploy, gain 1 redirect defense token. While attacking a squadron, if the defender is engaged with a friendly squadron without the printed heavy keyword, you may reroll 1 dice. So that's really powerful for flakking. So this ship has a blue and a black dice for flak. You can also add in link turbo laser towers if you're targeting a specific one. And I don't believe any of his fighters have heavy. So that means for the whole game, if they're engaged with your fighters, you get a reroll of flak, which is pretty good for killing squadrons off. His next two ships are both GR-75s. The first one has Leia, and that's so you can have some control over your 4-command Starhawk comms and proximity mines. This only gives them 1, but now we're up to a total of 3 proximity mines for the fleet. The second GR-75 has Torn Far for an additional reroll, so that means you could reroll the black and you can reroll the blue on your flak if it's near the Starhawk, which is pretty cool. It has proximity mines as well, and then the Bright Hope. So this fleet has a total of 4 proximity mines that it gets. For fighters, it has Lando, Shara, it has a couple YT-2400s, 4 of them to be precise, and VCX 100, along with a Lancer Pursuit craft. It comes in at 391 points, so I'm guessing he probably wants to go second. His objectives are surprise attack, contested outpost, and salvage run. I've actually...
John, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you real quick. I was briefly paired with Lucas. I think this is just a transcription error on his red objective. I was briefly paired with him, and he showed me marked for destruction. I think is the assault objective there. I think that's just when the data got entered, something must have happened. But it's not surprise attack. The other two are right.
Okay.
But I think it's just marked for destruction.
Sorry
to interrupt you there.
No, that's a problem. Okay, so mark for destruction. And so I've flown Starhawks with this almost exact setup, and they're really, really powerful. And one of the things that I like doing with it is because Agate, you don't have to choose until after you deploy. So that means you get to choose what type of token you want to bring. And with Expert Shield Text, that gives you a lot of options. So if you're going up against pretty much anything that I've seen so far in this top 4 list, which are all small amounts of damage and fighters, I would say I would bring a redirect. I would keep 1 brace. I would have 3 redirects, and I would have 2 salvos. And what this would allow me to do is I could use Expert Shield Tech 3 times a turn against fighters without ever having to discard anything. That brace cannot be really accuracy because of Agate's secondary ability, and then you can just Waylex Blix it in right after you discard it. So you could do that, or if you're going against a more ship-focused fleet, you just run in with the 2 braces, 2 redirects, and 2 salvos. It's a great build. It has options. It has a lot of firepower. I enjoy it. And for objectives, the VCX makes you really think about anything that has a token on it because you can control that. And I would have to reread Marked for Destruction. I wasn't considering that in my analyst because I don't know if I've ever actually played Marked for Destruction. That's the one that you have the
Purgles on it.
Purgles on it, right?
Yeah, I was trying to read. I've read it like 3 times in a row trying to.
Yeah,
It's got a critical effect, Purgles, and tokens.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on.
I think that's the primary advantage of taking it. It's just like an unreadable objective.
Right. After 4 games, do you really want to sit here and read 3 paragraphs?
Yeah.
And then, I've never played this. Don't do that at a tournament. But I'm sure it's very good. And I think it's also especially good because you can get 2 of those proximity mines on Purgle, and then you just zoop right into a ship, which is super fun. Yeah, I'm not gonna choose that one. I'm not even gonna bother to read it because I'll just never choose it in a tournament. I don't have enough experience with it. So we'll probably be playing Salvage Run. And the reason for that is there's a lower point limit. Salvage Run, if he gets all the tokens, he gets 80, and Contested Outpost, he'll get 120. The difference is that he should get all of those points earlier on in Salvage Run compared to Contested Outposts, which he has to play all 6 rounds. So more than likely you're playing all 6 rounds trying to take down one of these super salvo heavy Starhawks. So I would rather just give him 80 points off the bat instead of 120. So that's kind of my take on the objectives. One of you guys can jump in on that as well.
Yeah, that's what I would take too. Salvage run is running through March for Destruction, and it's so risky. Like you're going in at, there's a critical effect. Like if you end, each ship has a following critical effect. So if this attack is at close to medium range, you remove all objective tokens from the enemy ships, then assign an objective token to the defender. And then as the Purgles move, if the Purgle's at distance 1 of his ship with the objective token, that player may choose to discard 1 objective token, and the ship suffers a face down damage. And then the opposing fleet owner gains 1 victory token. It's just a mouthful of information.
So what you're saying is the ship gets a damage card because it's near a Purgle, and then 2 mines go off?
Yeah, it's just a disaster. Contested outpost, he's got the Starhawk. No, you're not going to beat it. And then salvage run. I think I have full faith and confidence I can get at least 1 token and run away. At least 1 minimum.
So the challenge of that is, though, you would have to go through 4 proximity mines to get to it. It's a very well thought out package of objectives. It's really difficult because it's already difficult to beat the Starhawk super tank, especially with all the rogues involved. But then all those are really bad objectives to pick.
I might actually go for Mark for Destruction. Because if you start looking at the list, right, you've got Salvage Run, which you're pretty much going to give away 80 points because those VCXs are going to come in and strategic the things around. Maybe you can pull one off. But again, like you said, what are you going to lose to get that 20 points? You're going to lose more than 20 points to get that. Contested Outpost is pretty much a guaranteed 100 to 120 point loss. With Mark for Destruction, you're looking at, you get to move one of the Purgles. So you can kind of get one of them away from you. So you're only potentially losing 90 points for all 6 turns. You're probably not going to lose it on the first turn. So you're really looking at 75. So you're already better than Salvage Run. And a Purgle only moves 1 to 2. So if you've got ships at speed, so again, for me, MSU, I'm usually moving at speed 3 or 4. I might take that because I might only lose 30 points.
Right, but it's almost 100% guaranteed if that Purgle gets near you, your ship is dead.
True, but my ship's going to be dead with any of the other ones too. Because in order to do something with Contested Outpost, if I'm flying MSU ships against a Starhawk,
right,
I mean, that's
you could
one
just
a
fly
turn.
away from it and not die.
I mean,
this time he's going to score points and kill you.
Yeah,
without even being near you, because it's 1 automatic hull damage.
Yeah.
Out of, let's just pick a ship, Argaten. That's 1
Sure.
out of the 5, and then you're rolling blue dice for 2 mines. That's potentially 4 more. You're dead before you do anything with it.
Yeah.
And then if he doesn't kill you, it just moves it again. Oh no.
I'm with Ken. I take Mark for Destruction. You're otherwise you're just already you're starting in a hole that you can't recover from on Salvage Run or Contested Outpost. So you still got a chance. And maybe I think what you have to figure out is, what do you want to engage? You can engage the fighters or you can engage the Starhawk, and you're going to have to start the game off thinking, do I have enough to take down the Starhawk?
So then I think the real answer is Contested Outpost is the answer.
If you have enough, yes, because you can get there turn 2, start firing off at the Starhawk. If you don't have a list that can take down a Starhawk, take surprise attack, kill his fighter ball, because his fighter ball is not if he probably flies it very close under his flak bubble, but because I think, John, you had looked at his scores in the tournament. I think he had 2 losses and there were probably 5 sixes. So my guess is those 2 games he didn't engage. His opponent didn't engage, and they just said, I don't have enough to take down the Starhawk. I'll just spend the next 2 hours flying around the board, unfortunately. But I think that's a choice you have to make.
Pull it up.
I think that's just a choice you have to make with Starhawk list. Do you have enough to take it down? But it's a good point. If you have enough to take it down, take Contested Outpost and just table it. Just go all in and table it. And I think people need to think, when you're going to a tournament, you might face a Starhawk, so you have to think: do I want to build my list?
That's 100% what happened in round 2. It was a 0-0 defeat, so he was first player, and the other player just chose not to engage. And then he lost by 3 points in round 2, and in round 4, he scored 359 points to 31, and in round 1 he scored 480 points to 15. So he had 2 10-1s and then 2 5-6s.
I feel like a CIS fleet with thermal shields. It's good against Starhawks.
Mm-hmm.
A Providence with Watt Tambor, because they can have the dice from that Starhawk and then recover them shields.
True. Yeah, this is just a very strong list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would not take Mark for Destruction.
Well, my thought is, like, I'm looking at this guy, right? He knows what he's doing. He's played that Purgle objective like 30 times and knows what he's going to do with his Purgles. I myself don't know what I'm going to do with the Purgle when it's my turn. Because I can't. I think you alternate moving the Purgles.
Yes.
He knows where he's going to put that Purgle to benefit him, and I'm going to pay for it dearly with proximity mines and a Purgle. So.
Yeah.
So when we were briefly paired before that everyone realized there was a mistake, he showed me the cards, and I was able to look through it, and I picked Marked for Destruction, not entirely knowing what it did, because and not knowing entirely what Purgles do, because I just thought
Purgles, you take 1 damage for every single speed that you're going.
Which probably wouldn't have been very good for my list.
Purgles are no bueno for me. I hate them. They're worse than Exogors, because for some, like, I don't know what I do wrong. I seem to get stuck in a position where the Purgle is chasing me and it's where I need to go. And if I hit it, I'm going to take 3 damage on my ship that's got 8 damage already.
It's only if you overlap it, right, that you take the damage, or does it when it rams into you? Is that
That's
no,
only
when
overlap.
you overlap it.
Yep.
okay?
I think the interesting thing with Mark for Destruction, because this is actually one of the objectives that I like. I've never really had an opportunity to play it much.
Because I'll never
but I like
pick it, Ken.
conceptually.
Never
Yeah, well,
pick it.
yeah. This is why I have to play against other people than you, John. But I think one of the interesting things about it is essentially it's got a little bit of theme to it, right? You get shot, and your ship's sparking and everything else. That attracts the Purgles to you, and that's how you catch the damage. That's what I'm thinking in my head. Like an ion blast, and you've got all the blue light shimmering around your ships.
We actually did play this once.
I think we did.
It was in the first Rebellion in the Rim, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you took a lot of damage from Purgles.
I did.
I just remember that I was killing all your ships before they activated with Purgles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
It was great. I loved it.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's just a hard fleet to crack. And as we see from the scores, it's either you lose, not by much, because honestly, your Starhawk has to be tabled. That's it. The other player has to go in. That's why, honestly, like Contested Outpost might be the best option, because you will win or you're going to lose. I know that's silly because that's how the game works, but that's really how this game works. Or you're going to win by big. And you can see it in the scores. He just obliterates the opponent, or he gets a 5-6, which is very good for advancing forward. Okay, let's move on to unless anyone else has anything else to add to that. Let's move on to the winning list. I think, Ken, you're going to be covering this one.
Yes. So this is Mackenzie's list. It's another Agate list. Seems like Kirsten managed to make it into the top 8 a little bit here.
I actually have some numbers to run down. We'll go over that after the
We'll
list.
go over that a little later. So here's what we have in this list. Kirsten Gate is on an Assault Frigate Mark II-A with Major Durlin, Ruthless Strategists, Reinforced Blast Doors, Link Turbo Laser Towers, and Gallant Haven. Gallant Haven's the one that if you've got a friendly squadron at distance 1, if it's going to suffer a damage, you can mitigate that. We also have a Nebulan B frigate with the Yavaris title. And then Yavaris is, again, the squadron one where you're double shooting, or you're adding an extra die into the attack pool with that one. Let's see what else we have here. We have a GR-75 medium transport with 8R Talon, Bomber Command Center, and boosted comms. So you're able to get one of your squadrons to activate a second time. Plus with the Bomber Command, that's a pretty potent combination. You have a second GR-75 medium transport. And John, I'd love to hear the stats that you have, if you've got them, on how many GR-75s have managed to find their way into Adepticon.
Too many.
Too many, yeah. Well, 18 points, right? Batoran Far, Comsnet, and that Bright Hope title again. It's amazing how many times that has popped up. 4 squadrons. We have Dutch Vander and Wedge Antilles, great pairing. Hera Syndulla, Lando Calrissian, 2 Skurg H6 bombers, and a VCX 100. When we look at the objectives for this fleet, we have precision strike, fire lanes, and intel sweep. So I'm looking at these already. Precision strike, I mean, you've got a bunch of bombers. That's not one you really want to take. Hera's giving rogue to a couple ships, which is just evil. Firing lanes, more objective play, objective token play. So those VCXs are going to be moving, the objectives all over the place. Just more points. And then intel sweep. I think that's the one that has the 5 objective tokens that are placed out, and whoever grabs 3 of them gets 75 points. Correct. So this is definitely designed around maximizing, getting those extra bonus points for the fleet. The VCX is definitely key to that. I'm sure it's going to be leveraged along with Hera so that you can ignore having to do a squadron command here and there. But, with 2 GR-75s, you're pretty much moving everything anyways. And then Lando's always a pretty decent deal when you want to get in and do a little bit of damage or just wreck some havoc. And again, another rogue squadron. I would not want to take precision strike against this fleet. No. I think that would just be death incarnate right there.
So what would you take?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of looking. I'd probably just do intel sweep and get the 75-point loss. Fire lanes, I think, would just be worse. Because that stands, 90 potentially, I think, because it's 15 points. Let me look it up real quick.
It's 45 points per round.
Yeah, 45 points per round. Yeah, so, yeah, I think my choice would be intel sweep here.
Ryan, Garrett, any other thoughts on that?
Well, so the problem, so I play Mac a lot. Mac is on TTS a lot. He's one of our moderators. And what Mac does is he forces you into fighting on his terms. He's really good at that. So, he's got this double blue flag from Yavaris and the assault frigate, and so he is going to force you to come to his bubble, basically. And so if you have to figure out when you're choosing your objective, how do I not fight in his bubble? And because he's just going to float around in this huge, blue flak bubble. If you go in it, he's going to destroy you with Skurgs. And I mean, Yavaris Skurgs. I mean, my gosh, two blacks and a blue. Like that would be just brutal. That he'll set up with Hera. That the turn before. So how do you break it down?
Or the turn of with Adon.
Yeah.
And then absolutely. Figure you also have ruthless strategists. So with each one of those flak shots, you could nail the VCX, you can nail Blando if you want. You've got a ton of haul that you can scatter that around to.
That's a great point. It's and Gallenhaven, which is the most probably the key to it. You're not going to alpha him, with an Imperial strike or something. And what are you going to alpha? Great, you take down a VCX. It's super difficult. How do you? I saw him play this, and he'll even go. Mac goes to speed 0 more than any player I've ever known. he'll go speed 0, and he'll just be patient and wait you out. And so I know it's a trap, and I feel bad saying it. I'm thinking Fire Lanes just because it's more. That's a bad. I guess I go Intel Sweep.
It's a terrible idea. But that's what he's hoping. He's hoping that you look at it and you're like, I don't want to automatically give him those points. But yeah, I'm 100% Intel Sweep. It's just one of those. You hand me that, boom, 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 Intel Sweep. That's how long it takes for me to pick Intel Sweep. Garrett, how about yourself?
Well, I feel like it's copping out to say Intel Sweep too, because that's like the smart choice. But maybe if I'm bringing a fleet I just feel confident, right? Pick that precision strike and try to turn it around in the moment, right? Like force him, instead of going to his bubble, force him to bring it to you. And if you've got something like, I don't know, a TF fleet, right? Just make it so punishing to attack you. But you gotta have anti-squadron. Otherwise, he's gonna tear you up. But I don't know. Intel Sweep's a smart choice, but I don't know if you're feeling real strong, maybe precision strike. Yeah, but because you could get points too, potentially. But Intel Sweep, 75 points. Take it and try and destroy Yavaris because it's weak, and you could destroy it easy if you get a shot at it.
So I guess an interesting question would be, if you have a heavy bomber fleet, do you think you could potentially do enough to counteract his bombers?
No.
Yes, that's kind of what I was debating.
It's a hard no. What fleet would be able to take this out? Like let's analyze different fighter squadron builds that are typical. As stated, he'll just sit there and let you alpha into his flak zone, and all your damage is reduced by 1, and then all of your squadrons die if you're Imperial. Like, this is like an Imperial nightmare, because even if you're using Imperial Rogue with like 6 health, you alpha in, right? And then he gets to activate all of his squadrons, but probably after he ruthless you. So that's 2 blue dice against every single one of your squadrons. So average, let's just say 1 damage, plus an automatic damage. So Imperial squadrons that are mainly 1, 3 hull. So you're only going to take 3 rounds of flak, and he doesn't even need a hit. He doesn't even need to shoot you. 3 rounds of flak, you are dead on a scatter ace. Like, he will just eat you alive. And then his squadrons are still decent enough for anti-squadron. Like Wedge, wham, you've already activated. That's 6 dice against you. And then he uses Talon to make him do it again. Wham, 6 more dice against you. He will obliterate your fighter ball if you come to him. So then you just automatically lose 6-5 without engagement. So Imperial fighters can't take this on easily, because you killing him, he doesn't really care because he's just going to flak you. The CIS is in the exact same boat for its squadron health. Like, most of the time, if you see a squadron heavy CIS list, it's going to be Tri-Fighters. Well, Tri-Fighters only have 3 health without any tokens. That means 1 round of flak kills it. Done. Gar doesn't have anything near enough firepower to do this, because Gar is we're engaged with you and we fight back and forth, or we're using Ahsoka to try to snipe you, and all of his stuff has too much health to be able to do 3 activations with snipe 3 to kill you. So then he can just leave his bubble for a little bit and then pull him back with Rogue at the next turn. You're not going to be able to, with Gar, hit through that bubble fast enough. Then you go to Rebel, and it's just mere Rebel fleets against each other. Well, that's not going to work because he has you in a ruthless bubble. So there's going to be no way that with any fighter thing, if he sits there in his bubble, that you're going to be able to kill him out.
Yeah, I mean, he just dominated every round he played. Day 1 and day 2. It's a hard to beat fleet.
If you see this across the table, you just have to make a rule for yourself, and if you break this rule, just walk away. But the rule is, do not engage under his flak bubble, like whatever it takes, because you will lose, and that's what he wants, and he's going to flak everything. I don't know how you win. I really don't know. I think a Starhawk could take it. I do think that. I think a Starhawk list could tank it enough to pick off Yavaris, maybe. and to tie down the fighters long enough to try to table it. But I don't know. I don't know how you beat it.
It's just straight up outgunning the. You need to pin the assault frigate. So honestly, do you know what the best thing against it is? Your Radis build. You drop that right in the front of it so it can't move, and then you just shoot your way through. You'll be able to survive one. You'll be able to survive 2.5 rounds of bombers if you have some fighters just to cover you. Basically, you need a token fighter screen to throw into that flak bubble so that his fighters don't kill yours, and then your big ship has to kill his big ship. But at a tournament level, when you're playing because he just plays for like 7/8 because he doesn't care. He doesn't need big wins. He just needs wins. Because all you need to do to get to day 2 is get 2 7s and 2 6s. You just don't, no big losses. And that's the same. That's what you see with why that Starhawk can advance. It has big wins and then it has no real losses. While this list, all it's looking for is that 7-4. And if you do the math, 7-4 multiple times is 28 points. And 28 points would have landed you tied for 10th to 8th place. So if you get 7 4s every single round, you automatically get in. That's why his objectives are built the way they are, because it gives him just enough objective points that if you don't engage, he automatically gets that 7-4. This is a really good list. So basically you have to put him in a position that he is going to take a loss to not get that.
I will say, I mean, and maybe this is crazy. Maybe precision strike is it, because you can opt not to engage it and take a 5-6 with precision strike. Maybe he flies Hera and his rogues across the table to get at you at that point. But you're gambling, right? You're gambling. It could easily go 10-1 very quickly.
Point defense ion cannons would be good defense against his squadrons. I mean,
but if you're throwing 3 dice, like he could throw 3 dice with you, 3 bomber dice with Yavaris, which is insane. Like PDIC is not going to help. And I mean, this is another list where there is no real ship firepower here. Like there really isn't. It's all the powers in the squads.
Yeah, but at the same time, there is. And that's because there's such a dynamic now that red dice are so much more important than any other dice. It has basically 3 shots out of every arc, 3 red dice. And if you take a salvo with Agate, then that's 2 red dice on a salvo. It can punch hard. So it's 2 out the front, 2 out the back salvo at long range, and then its shot is 3 red dice, while Yavaris itself is 3 red dice out the front. Like, you can put out damage. But
I just don't think that's where he's getting most of the.
No, it's his squadron.
He's forcing you into this, like, I don't want to engage it, but I have to engage it. And then he wins.
You 100% take for second player against this fleet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it's not that hard to do because it's 96 points. So you just need a decent bid. And then you make him come to you. And then hope you have fighters. Because if he comes to you and you don't have fighters, you lose. And he'll be able to turn most objectives against that other people are using with his VCX against them. What's interesting is this is basically a mirror list of the other list we saw already. Henry, I believe's list that was in 3rd place.
Yeah.
They're almost exactly the same.
It's like 2017 called and they want their Gallenhaven Yavaris list back.
Oddly enough, so if we think about it, didn't a Gallenhaven list win the previous LVO 2019?
I don't remember.
I believe so. And I know he at the time, I believe, was playing, again, because you said Speed Zero, a strange Piet. I call it, every year I go to a tournament, there's always something like, because he's Canadian, correct? Like, this is the same Mac I'm thinking about? Okay, good.
Yep.
Sometimes, like, real life and then internet life, it just, things gets blurry. But I believe he was playing a Piet super heavy rogue imperialist that he'll just sit at the back corner of the table with
Yeah,
him.
I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
It's really good. And he wasn't able to punch through Gallant Haven. So I think not being able to punch through Gallant Haven made him then look at Gallant Haven as a source. Because I think this list is very, very similar to that Gallant Haven list. I would have to go back and find the records for 2019 LVO. But I'm really thinking that list was a Gallant Haven rogue sit there with
Are you talking about the list that Sam brought did well with LVO? I think it had Gallant Haven, but I think it was a Radis list, right?
Yeah, it's a Radis list.
Yeah.
I believe so. So maybe.
Okay.
So the Radis, so maybe it took second. I don't know, but all I know is that list. You just sit there in Gallant Haven's bubble until the ship comes close, and then you just drop Radis on top of whatever comes close to you.
Yep.
So I think it's the same basic build though of upgrades on it, except now you have Agate that's way more powerful.
Yeah, and that like the Piat list is like a really good point because it's a Star Destroyer and a Gladiator, both with 7th Fleet, both with early warning system, and it's a tank, right? He goes to speed 0, he tanks, and he forces you into the engagement. You come across these lists where they're trying to control your engagement, and Mac is really good at that. It forces you to make bad decisions by controlling the engagement and doing it on your terms, and it's really super difficult. It's just super difficult to navigate.
Yeah. Again, in that list specifically, it's made to take 7/4s without actually fighting.
Right.
Which, like, honestly, most of the time I can be like, yeah, that's a Mac list. Because most of Mac lists are, I can get a 7/4 without actually playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we play the game, it's just a game on top of me already getting a 7/4. So it's really well built. Okay, so big congratulations out to Mac. His list is mean, and it worked very well for him in this Adepticon tournament.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I didn't really have a ton of time. I've been busy this last week, so I started diving into numbers and things like that for the Adepticon tournament. So I don't have anything fancy to like flash up on the screen for the recorded version or anything like that. But a lot of people were talking about how onagers are, one, fine, and two, that this was the downfall of the onagers, and I actually disagree with that. And I'm probably one of the few players that are people looking in and seeing that. And I have a couple of reasons for that, so I'll let you guys talk about what your opinions are on that, and then I'll just start dropping through some numbers and why I think that is. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is this meta now dead to onagers?
Well, I'll say this. There was my opponent, my first round, I forget his name, I apologize. I think it might have been Lucas, said he was playing against an onager player, and the onager player said, everyone that I've played against is teched against onagers. So I think you have, I'll say that, at the very least, you have a plan. If you want to do well at a tournament, you got to have a plan for onagers. The highest ranking onager got, there was no onagers in the top 8, obviously. Yeah, so I'll leave that to John. 18. So I think everyone had a plan, whether it be, Agate for bracing, or Radis, I think, is a good counter, or Kraken is a great counter on onagers. Everyone's got a plan for onagers. So I'll just say that.
Okay. Ken, Garrett, any thoughts before throwing forward?
I mean, no. We looked at the data. None of the top players face an onager list or a really strong onager list. So it's really hard to extrapolate from this tournament data. Like, is this rebel build going to be effective against a world's top 4 onager build? And I think it's all the top 4 are still going to have a real hard time dealing with an onager across the table, especially a build like Sam's. The onager with the double dictator is just going to be hard to fight against with these rebel fleets specifically.
Yeah.
We're going to need more data going through the summer and fall.
And I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with those statements that we need more data, but I will also agree with what Ryan was saying. So I was able to be at Adepticon for Saturday, and I kind of was just talking to a couple of the players that were in day one, didn't make it to day two. They all kind of said the same thing. There wasn't a lot of onager play. It was, I guess, it was mostly was it rebel dominated? I think it was kind of the impression I got.
Yeah.
And all of them said the same thing, as they were planning and had been practicing against onager fleets. So I think, again, too early to tell, because this is, I think, the first major tournament that has come out live as opposed to virtual over TTS or Vassal. So and I think it's also a slightly different meta than you're going to get in a TTS or Vassal tournament. So those tend to be more worldwide. At least that's my impression. Would that be fair, Brian?
Yeah, I think it's also a lot easier to play an onager online. Placing the ignition token. You're constantly going back and forth between these pre-designed arcs that just pop up when you press a button, none of which is present on a table. So I think it's easier to play onagers online for sure.
I would agree with that as well. Okay, so let's start diving into a few of the statistics. But before I get there, let's just talk about, I think it's a definite meta change. The West Coast is very well known for being Imperial-centric players, and that's where we see, like, for the LVO, we saw a ton of onager lists. Sadly, I didn't have time to go through and run the numbers for the percentage of onagers that showed up at LVO. I really wish I did, but I haven't had time to do that. But West Coast is very much so onager interdictor land, and they kind of always have been that way. While here in the Midwest, which is where Adepticon came in, it is very much so a rebel-dominated region, especially rebel heavy fighter. And by heavy fighter, I mean bringing at least 100 points of fighters, if not more. So let's dive into some numbers here. So there were 52 players. 21 of them were Empire, 17 of them Rebel, 10 of them Gar, which is actually a higher percentage of Gar than I thought that were going to be there, and then 4 CIS players. Out of the 21 Imperial players, there were 8 players that had onagers, which comes to roughly 15% of the total field had onagers. And that made up 38% of the Imperial as a whole. This is why having the numbers for LVO would be useful. And none of them made it to the top 8. The highest that they finished was in 18th, but the majority of them actually placed under 30th place, with a few of them dropping out after the second round. For the Rebels, an interesting tidbit, out of the 17 Rebels, 10 of them were Agate, which is a huge amount of Agate, because Agate gives you tons of benefit for almost no cost. 19% of the total field was Agate. 58% of the Rebels were Agate. And 3 of them made it to the top 8, which means that 37% of the top 8 were also Agate. So looking through quickly before we did this podcast, I went through and I just looked at the fighter heavy lists. Out of the 17 Rebel lists, 10 of them were fighter heavy with a minimum of 100 points of squadron. Which means it's the same percentage as Agate. So 19% of the total field for the whole thing was fighter heavy, specifically for the Rebels. So 50% of the Rebel fleets were fighter heavy. And there's quite a few of those lists that were greater than 75 points of Rebels. So you're looking at nearly 100% of Rebels having medium to heavy squadron builds. And what they all have in common is they either go one of 2 ways. One way is you're looking at a big spall, and the other way is what you see at the list that we looked at, which is basically all rogue rebels. Lando is in almost everyone's list. And out of those fighter heavy lists, 5 of them made it to the top 8, meaning that 62% of the top 8 were rebel fighter heavy lists, which is a lot. So those are just some of the numbers I wanted to throw out there, just to see how many onagers versus... There's more agates than there are onagers that showed up, which is kind of crazy. And they did extremely well. I think, is that the top 3 teams or top 3 places were all, yeah, top 3 places were all taken by Agate, which is crazy. And then I went through and I wanted to see how many onagers actually played people that were in the top of the field. And in the top 8 teams, 2 of the players, I say teams, but you know what I meant. 2 of the players did not face a single onager to their way to the top 8, and that was Mackenzie and Jason, who placed 8th going into. Actually, that's 8th overall. Didn't face any onagers. Out of the 32 matches between the 4 rounds for the people that came into the top 8, they've played a total of 9 onagers. And most of those were the lower level onagers compared to those that's placed in like the top. There's a couple that placed like 18th, 19th, 20th. And they weren't really played at all by the players that made it to 8. So looking at that, I can't actually say that this is the meta that killed onagers. I think onagers just didn't show up, and some of the best players with onagers, which are the West Coast players, didn't come to this tournament. So it's hard to say, because these players that are playing and winning with Rebels are the players that are winning with Rebels even at LVO. So this is the same group of like really experienced Rebel players that are playing it. And the really experienced players that are coming with onagers aren't here. So really experienced players are going to really win with regardless of what they play. That's kind of my opinion on this. Any thoughts from any of those stats, guys?
Yeah, I mean, what does it say about the Empire without the Onager? If the Onager didn't exist right now, where would the Empire be?
Actually, there are quite a few Imperial players that placed above the
In the top 16?
Yes.
Where's that? I get looks like two in the top day one.
I think that's a great point though, Garrett. Like I think it's an essential part of the the Imperial kit, and if you're not performing well, with an onager, you might have issues.
Yeah, it just seems like if there's a winning Imperial fleet, it's got an onager now, and if there's not a winning Imperial fleet, I mean it's just one and the same now at this point.
So why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, Agate is so beneficial for her low points compared to other Imperial admirals. I know Thrawn is so popular. Right? He's like, 32 points? Is that right? I think he's in the 30s. But yeah, who else are you taking? Screed, and then Ramadi. Ramadi because he's cheap and he has a die. But what's better? Like a whole other defense token, basically, with whale explosives and Agate, or an extra red die for a shot.
Yeah. You also then don't need to spend money on ECM, which has been nerfed for Imperial Star Destroyers having to now use a token, because Agate allows you to just discard a token and get the same effect as ECM, and then the next time you activate with Whalix, you get it right back.
Right. So Empire hasn't. I think Pittix is like one of their biggest changes. They can take point defense line cannons on them. They haven't changed a whole lot since Wave 7 when the Chimera came out. The Super Star Destroyer didn't really change the world. And then the Onager came out, and that's been its biggest thing. But if you take the Onager out of the equation, I mean, it seems like Rebels just dominate Imperial fleets.
So the answer to that is the GR75. And it's the activation advantage. Because most Imperial fleets are going to land somewhere in between 3-ish activations, maybe 4. And most of these Rebel lists are 5 to 7 activations. Even with past tokens, that's not going to change it. So the only time period that the Imperial were winning consistently is when they had Governor Price and could guarantee going last first. And we had such an outcry of that they had to remove her completely. But
those fleets, token thing now.
Those fleets came to play the game as in fighting and actually playing the game, compared to the fleets that we're seeing nowadays, which are I'll sit here and I'll farm tokens, which is the reason why Price was made to begin with, was to try to get rid of the fish farm. Now we're just into fancier fish farm and Rebel MSU fleets that can just out activate you so you don't get shot. So that needs to be solved. And the onager needs to be solved. It's not just the onager's the issue. The issue is that there's a lot of things that are way too cheap on the Rebel side that have never been nerfed that really need to be nerfed. and you need to nerf the onager, so then those are brought down to the level of what the ISD is. That's my opinion, but people will
I agree.
strongly
I agree.
disagree
I mean,
with that.
the token farm. I mean, and I think it almost. The game is very strategic, and I know token farming is a big part of it, but it almost takes away part of the fun of the fleet combat aspect of the game, to where we're not really fighting anymore. We're just trying to get points from tokens.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say this, like, let's see how it fleshes out. Let's see at the next big tournament, how people are responding. I think we said after LVO, it's an onager meta. You need to be prepared. I think after Adepticon, you got to be prepared for Agate. You got to have a plan for exhausting the defense tokens very, very quickly, and whether that's boarding troopers or having lots of 3 dice attacks or something. You just have to figure out, you have to have a list that can take down a tank going forward. How are you going to do that? And that's up to the player, and that's part of the fun, list building puzzle. But I think it's a necessary part now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I'm not actually all doom and gloom. I'm just saying that this is actually very interesting data. These lists look like they're the same type of lists that were doing well years and years ago at the Rebel. Nothing's changed. What has changed is the onager, and because of the onager and different cards changing on the Imperial side being nerfed, it's harder for Imperial players to play the same game. Also, what's interesting is 2 out of the 4 CIS fleets made it into the top 8, which is kind of not what was expected at all.
They have the highest cut rate, I guess, right?
Right. So what we're saying is, if you want to make it to the top 8, bring CIS. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're good. Or bring Patriot's Fist. They both have Patriot's Fist in them
Yes.
in their fleets. So I do want one other thing. There's not a lot when you look at the numbers. Like, this is between making the cut, and going down the list. Like, it was a tight tournament. And this is kind of the AMG. I know you're not listening, but like, just maybe if you are, make the cut top 16 next time. There's a lot of players coming from all over, from the West Coast, from the East Coast, from the Midwest. We have people coming from other countries, and all they want to do is play competitive, top flight Armada. And 8 is just brutal. Like, I got 7th, after the first day, and there's nothing fundamentally, separating what I did versus what the 16th player did, other than like a dice roll, really is what, 3-4 points are in tournament scoring. So it needs to be top 16. It was such a good field, like a lot of good players who didn't make it in. And, in terms of list variety, right? If you want to see list variety, let more people into the cut, then you'd have more Gar, then you'd have more Empire, just something to think about.
And by more, you mean some. Just one list. Yeah, if you look at the point breakdown, Mac on day 1 scored 34 points, and then if you go 10 points down to 24, that's 21st place. So the difference of 10 points is 21st place. And Mac scored 4 more points than anyone else in the entire field. So you're looking at a 6-point range has basically 21 fleets in it. Yeah, no, I feel like it would be very interesting to see when we get to Worlds what actually takes place, because we already know the people from LVO should be going, and most of the people there already had tickets from previous events and things like that. And then this event also is going to add this group in, so it's going to be interesting what all the different metas from all the different tournaments are going to be to get to a Worlds. And then like the people that already have tickets, when they're going to still go to the other tournaments, because like you said, people that play Armada just want to play Armada. So do they just start bringing some weird things, and then like you don't actually see the development then go forward, because maybe someone wants to be the first person to get a Gar fleet into the top, I'm just going to make it up, 10. Like, then you just have people dedicated to that already have world tickets, which then skews toward you know, is it Onager's going to be better? Is this Rebel Agate Fleet's going to be better? Like, what is it? You know what I mean? Like, well, it'll be interesting to see what
Interdictor
this...
combat refits. That's what we're going to start seeing.
I'm still saying that's not the answer. It's never the answer, Ken. Oh, man. Yeah, so that's kind of just some observations that I made on it. So you guys have anything else to throw in there?
No, just a great tournament, good data point. You know, great to see Ken there in person. So it was fun.
To that, Ryan, it was great to actually be able to meet you in person. That was kind of fun. I was kind of waiting because you were in the middle of the game when I showed up. And I think you were setting dials. You looked over and you did a double take. That was actually kind of funny. But you know, a big shout out to everyone that I know has recognized me while I was there. I'm sure, Ryan, you probably got one or two people that know who you were as well from here in Command Stack.
Not yet. No, but people I've played before, you know, like a lot of nice. This is my first big in-person tournament, and so it's nice to, you know, Henry, who got third. I'd played him before. Nice to meet Mac in person, who I've been playing online for the last 2 years. Like, you know, finally met him in person. So it was fun. There are a lot of good, you know, Armada is just, you know, it's the best in person. So I hope we can keep going. You know, I hope we can, whenever Worlds is, whenever that'll be, you know, I hope they don't limit it to like 16 people. So,
well, I think
that'd be
everyone
tragic.
from 2019 season has world passes still, so that's at least 20 if they choose to come. And now we're up to 8 more, so we're at like 28-ish.
Four more. Yeah.
Well, didn't LVO they give them out as well?
I don't think so. I think this is the first time they've been at Worlds in
Really?
2 years.
So we're up to 24 then.
Yeah.
It's just so much old data to go through to see where Worlds invites came from for that earlier grouping, you know.
I feel like there's more than 20 from 2019, but
I feel like our listeners, that can be a job for them, you know.
yeah. Speaking of that, like if you have any insight or questions, like definitely send us an email. What was the email again, Ryan?
command.stack.podcast@gmail.com. I'm just waiting to get emails. So
yeah, it's always fun to bounce things off from. It's when I'm listening to a podcast, I always like to see what the community writes in, to see what the host how they'll react to it. So please send something, and leave us a review too, if you could. We'd really appreciate that. It helps bump the podcast up. More people listen to more Armada.
I believe one of you guys were running data, and apparently there's not many people that podcast for games. Because we're already like 8th in Australia. Yeah,
we're
top 10.
We're killing it. We're killing it in Australia.
We'll be number 1 in Australia after the next episode when we talk about the Australian Grand Championship.
Yes,
absolutely. And we'll see what their meta is down there. It's always fascinating to see how meta changes from location to location, because we all have the same access to the same ships and cards, and you see things that are completely different, even like one state over, let alone all the way around the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over again where you can find our podcast, and then I think we're gonna close it out then.
You can find Command Stack at Apple Podcasts, at Spotify. We have a Twitter account. We'd like to get some followers there. And then command.stack.podcast@gmail.com. You can email us.
Perfect. We record these and we put them out on the Ion Radio YouTube channel, so you can find us there as well. And then you can find, if you need to get a hold of us, with Discord. And if you don't want to email us, we're very happy to get emails. But if you just want to use Discord, you can contact us on the Ion Radio Discord. We have a whole channel for it. Yeah, I think that's about it. So until next time, I'm John.
I'm Ken.
I'm Garrett.
Ryan. We'll get it. I'm Ryan.
One day we're gonna get this. Okay, so we are the command staff of the Command Stack. So hope to see you guys all soon live for Armada. Until next time.